All right, let's create a Kubernetes cluster in Google Cloud Platform. In order to do this, you'll need billing enabled, and let's stick to all the defaults. What we're going to do during this brief lesson is set up a Google Cloud Platform Kubernetes cluster. We're going to install Ingress via Nginx. We're going to install Cert-Manager. We're going to install a service. WordPress sounds fine. And then we're going to point a domain name at the load balancer and wrap that domain in SSL via Cert-Manager. We did a previous video outlining how to do this very briefly in using KubeLego, but KubeLego has since been depreciated, so it's time to migrate over to Cert-Manager. However, this is not a migration, this is just a fresh install. It's very simple and straightforward. While this is installing, let's go ahead and get some of these prerequisites out of the way. You need Google Cloud Tools installed on your command line. You could also optionally use the Cloud Shell if you prefer. We're going to use the command line with Google Cloud Tools installed. You'll need Helm installed. You can install Helm with Brew. If you don't have it installed, I'm using version 3.03. Anything 3 plus will be fine. Actually, I think anything 2 plus will be fine. You'll need a domain name. Then, of course, your Google Cloud Platform with billing enabled so that you can install a cluster. While it's doing this, if you just freshly installed you freshly installed Helm via Brew install Helm, you will need to add a repo. So Helm repo add, let's add stable Kubernetes charts.storage.googleapis.com. Now, not everything Helm would be nice instead of help. Now, not all of these packages are super stable. As a matter of fact, if you did help, I keep typing help there, but not all of those packages are super stable, but it seems to be the default go-to for most packages that you want to install. Now that our cluster is up, let's connect to it. And create a cluster role binding admin so that we don't run into any problems with authority. And let's install some Ingress. Search through the repo, the stable repo for Nginx Ingress. I don't care to name anything, I'll let it name itself. So it's just going to use Nginx -ingress some integer when you let it name itself. So we installed Nginx Ingress. And now let's go ahead and add another repo for JetStack, because if you search through the stable repo, that's actually an old version of Cert-Manager, so you definitely want Helm repo add JetStack, this JetStack version. So https://charts.jetstack.io. Helm repo update. Helm repo search Cert-Manager. It's Helm search repo Cert-Manager. Excuse me. And you'll see, yeah, there's one under stable, it's old, and then Cert-Manager. It's still, they're both still pre-version 1, so I assume you shouldn't use them in production, but we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. All right. Now we need to install the custom resource definitions. Without this, the install will fail, and I'll link to this resource in the video description below. And I'm going to go ahead and cube control create namespace Cert-Manager. And you don't have to do this step of creating the namespace and then installing it in the namespace, but it makes it so that you don't have it being listed out if you have a bunch of other stuff in the default namespace, and it doesn't have to share namespace with anything. So if you list out all the pods and services in a single namespace or the Cert-Manager namespace, then it's just these items. So it's just it's like keeping things in folders. It's convenient. So we're going to have it automatically generate a name for us, or have Helm generate a name for us, and then we're going to install it in the namespace of Cert-Manager that we just created. And since we created an Ingress a moment ago, let's go ahead, or added an Ingress service. Let's go to our load balancing and then grab this IP address. Go over to our domain manager, and in this case I'm managing codejet.net. I'm going to add a subdomain and point it at this. We're going to say, we'll just do WP and points to the IP address. I don't think I use WordPress yet, but either way, I don't even really use the domain. But now we have WP pointing at the Ingress. And if we go back to workloads, we'll see that everything is installed. So now that we have Cert-Manager installed, we can go ahead and establish a cluster issuer. And in this case, our cluster issuer is just simply a configuration for one of the many different issuers that Cert-Manager supports. We're going to go ahead and use Acme for Let's Encrypt. And in this case, the name is really important. You can have it anything you want, but you just have to make note of that name. We're just going to have it Let's Encrypt. A lot of people have it like Let's Encrypt Prod, Let's Encrypt Stage, different versions, or not versions, but different accounts for Let's Encrypt, so that you can have multiple issuers in this instance. So now we're going to apply our cluster issuer. There we go. Now we have a Let's Encrypt issuer. Let's go ahead and install WordPress. That'll take a minute. So Helm search repo WordPress. Grab this. And Helm install WordPress, generate name. If you were doing a production release of this kind of stuff, you'd probably put WordPress in its own namespace. There we go. And if we refresh here, we'll see that WordPress and a database for it, Mario, is being installed. Once these resources are complete, we'll go ahead and configure an Ingress. As a matter of fact, let's just start creating that Ingress. I'm going to copy this service name. I know that in that list that is the service name, but you can come down here and you can see that it has services being exposed. This particular instance of WordPress being installed through Helm is going to expose its own load balancer, but we're going to go do this through the Ingress. But I'm going to grab the service name of the WordPress and pop over to our Ingress. I'm going to do Ingress WordPress is what I'm going to call it. The cluster issuer that we showed is the name is Let's Encrypt, so these two have to match here. You can create as many cluster issuers as you like. There's a whole bunch of options. What do we do? wp.codejet.net. So the secret name is what and ultimately holds the TLS. If you were doing SSL certs manually, you would just create a secret with the cert in it. In this case, we're just going to set that so Cert-Manager can pick it up for us. And then the service name that we're going to point our Ingress at on port 80. We're going to terminate the SSL right here at our Ingress and then forward the traffic via 80 in. All right. When this is live, we can go ahead and let it go. All right, so we have WordPress. Let's just make sure that this is correct again. wp.codejet.net. All right, everything looks good here. We're going to have TLS Acme of true. It's going to be HTTPS, Ingress class of Nginx, and the cluster issuer of Let's Encrypt. So apply our Ingress. And then we can see, if we go over to WordPress, that it will now have an additional Ingress. It created its own Ingress here. We don't need this one. we're gonna end up using this. So we could delete this load balancer. I believe this is a TCP UDP port load balancer. It's unnecessary at this moment in time. It's just a Helm install artifact. But let's go back here. And that was, usually there's a tool running here, but let's go see what Cert-Manager did for us. Check the container logs. It scheduled a service for renewal. Does not require reissuance. Order has been completed, so let's see if that worked. wp.codejet.net. All right, that doesn't, yep, there's the SSL cert. So now it's wrapped in an SSL cert, as you would expect. So that is very briefly how to accomplish setting up a brand new Kubernetes cluster with a Cert-Manager. We're using Cert-Manager to automatically get Let's Encrypt SSL certs, wrapping whatever service you install. It doesn't have to be WordPress. It can be anything. Thank you.